Elen Sililumana Mentielvo. A star shines on the hour of our meeting. Hello, friends. I'm Narelon Starfire. Pronouns he, him. Welcome to the stream. It's Sunday, which is painting day, isn't it? So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing something new today. We'll talk more about it as we go. But first of all, hope you all having a good day today. Hope your weekend's been very nice. Hi, Loomis. How you doing? Hope it's going all right. How are we all doing? So, it's painting day as always. And what I know I said last week maybe we'll be doing the Drukhari witches, but they're kind of at a bit of a boring point with them. So it might be something I need to do a bit off stream before we carry on from where we were before. Which is, this sort of thing that happens. Because I know the main thing is that the conversations we're having, etc. But at the same time, I don't want it to be tedious for you to watch. I'm doing good, thank you. How are you today? I'm fine, thank you. Seem to be just constantly running late today, not quite getting everything done that I wanted, but we're getting there. I'm glad you're doing alright. Now, what do we have here? Hello, B-Rat. How are you doing alright today? Hope you're having a good day. So what do we have here? So this is a Space Marine. Not technically Blood Angels, but they're kind of Space Marine. Baal Predator. Now, before we carry on, yes, it should be pronounced Baal, but the planet in Warhammer 40,000 or system, to be prefer, is just pronounced Baal. It doesn't have the glottal stop in the middle. So, what we got going on? It's kind of Predator tank. It's like sort of the general Space Marine tank. The Predator. Better than the last 2 days, we've had the worst floods in 30 years in Slovenia. Oh, grief, BR, you're right. Have you been flooded out? Or, hope everything's okay. Chunky tanks are great. They are, and I really like them. I love the design of any of the Rhino chassis-based vehicles. But yes, I suppose I should kind of do a bit of an explainer. But we'll perhaps do that as we go on a little bit. I got fluff on this, I don't know how. So yeah, Predator tank. That's the normal Space Marine version. There's a couple of different turret options. This is the Baal Predator, which means it's the anti-infantry version that's specific to the Blood Angels. There you go. So that means in its turret, it's got either these, which is a twin-linked assault cannon, or you can assemble it with a flamestorm cannon, which is basically a big flamethrower. Nah, actually, I'm not. I'll say the thermal cannon is a very different weapon, but looks faintly familiar in terms of the muzzle. But yeah, so you can see the Blood Angels iconography on the gun mantlet. That's what we're doing. I'm fine. My hometown is kind of fucked though. We'll see what the damage is in a few days when it dries up. Most of it was under a metre of water on Friday. Oh, grief. That's terrible. That is terrible. I should stop moaning about British weather. When I'm like, it's August and it's only 13 degrees. That's annoying, but that's not under a metre of water. I like all the little vents and stuff. Yeah, me too. I love the design of them. I could wax lyrical. Maybe I will a little bit as we go on. But I love the design of the Rhino-based vehicles. So for anybody who didn't know, the Rhino is essentially this, minus the guns. It's an APC. What's the word? Greebles. Yes, it's got tons of greebling on it. I love stuff like that. I love that it looks like it could work. Obviously it's fictional, but I love that it sort of looks like it could work. We've got little air intakes at the back. And tanks do have little air intakes towards the back. They'd normally be on a real tank, what they call louvres, which are like grills. Actually, I was going to say they normally have louvres. They're here. That's what the louvres are. That's essentially the sort of semi-armoured covering over the engine, because the engine's got to cool off, right? The exhaust of the engine are obviously these, which, yeah, you can nitpick the details, but yeah, that's where the engine is. They're the air intakes on the side. So it all looks quite practical. It's a design that looks like it could function. I just love it. It's a fun design. You can see it's got the armored, got smoke launchers, got armored front. I always love the little stuff like that, like details when they put them on model tanks. Like tow hooks. Little stuff like that I absolutely love. Because they're the kind of little things that real tanks have. I don't know, it's fictional, blah, blah, blah. But, like real designs have little things like that for various practical purposes that don't factor into a war game. So having them there, it's a nice detail that kind of adds to the realism of it all. And the flare holders or whatever at the front. Yeah, the smoke grenade launchers. You can kind of see them from there. Yeah, which is all about putting smoke down. It's a common tank tactic. Chuck smoke around. There's a little bit of motion in the kit as well, which is quite nice. I see Commander's Q-pillar. I also like that. You can assemble these with the hatches up or down. So I did one of each. Which is just ammunition stowage. Obviously you really wouldn't have the cover open. But I think it's a nice little detail to have to show the ammunition stowage. If you go for the Inferno cannon version, it's big tanks at the back, which is nice. You can't really beat the Tsar tank for sheer ridiculous design that also almost worked IRL. I think these chunk tanks would work much better, yeah. The Tsar tanks, is that the giant wheels? Or is that a different one I'm thinking of? Because I know there's that one that the Russians built in the First World War that's like two gigantic wheels with like an engine, kind of like an engine cockpit with a little turret in the middle, and then like almost like a stabilizer stuck out at the back. Yeah, the giant wheels, yeah, that's it. Just, I can see what they're going for. But, yeah. Right, let's start painting it. Oh, it's also got these what are called sponsons. So this is secondary armament mounted on the side. There we go. They also have, I'd call it an old-timey tractor tank almost. They also have huge wheels and engine and sometimes a cabin. Yeah, absolutely. It's a tractor turned into a war machine, really. You can see there as well, which I quite like. When you turn the sponson around, you've got all the ammunition stowed inside. Yeah, that's kind of a fun little detail. You've got absolute masses of ammo stowed up there. It wouldn't actually last very long if it's a machine gun, though. Once you turn those around, you can burn through machine gun ammo very, very quickly. On the Second World War planes, isn't it something like if they fired their machine guns for like 8 seconds or whatever, it would use up all the ammunition on the plane? So actually these things do burn through ammunition very quickly. Technically the Rhino base was intended as a farm vehicle by a much more advanced civilization, right? The Rhino was a transport vehicle. Whether that's like a farm vehicle or what, there's some vagaries about that. But essentially it's a transport vehicle. For travelling across like hostile environments. So it's not necessarily like a military vehicle, it's a transport for like an all-terrain transport, I guess. But yeah, so there we go. So we're going to start with this. Now, if you remember the whole spiel, the whole thing I've talked about before if you've been here for that, I decided to do, I'm doing some Horus Heresy stuff, and I was trying to work out which of the legions, loyalist or traitor, that I wanted to do. And I went backwards and forwards on it a lot and went through different ideas, and I eventually settled on the Blood Angels. But I'm going to paint them like the Flesh Eaters. Now, the Flesh Eaters are a chapter of Space Marines who aren't really talked about much anymore, but were actually in the very first Warhammer 40,000 edition. They were in Rogue Trader. They're obviously a little bit goofy. Flesh Eaters. They had like Pray for Death, like scrawled on their armour. But of course the early Space Marine models were painted, it had a style of armour that we now call like Mark 6. And when they've re-released the Horus Heresy game, the Mark 6 armour is the one that they've really gone for. So I thought it'd be a nice tie-in to do them like the Flesh Eaters of old. Not to be confused with the Flesh Tearers, who are a different faction. And much more famous. And actually still talked about. rather than the flesh eaters that like everybody's kind of tried to forget about a little bit. I had a dream once about an artillery design that was Warhammer 40k-ish, but inspired by the Tsar tank. I should turn it into a 3D model in Blender someday. Basically, wheels strapped onto a 100-meter long barrel. That would be really cool. Yeah, I'd be right. I like the idea of that. So I'm using essentially one of my biggest model painting brushes. We're doing a tank, and yes, once again, we can kind of bring this up and say, but Narelon, wouldn't it be more efficient to use an airbrush? It would, but I don't have one. It sounds like a chore, honestly. Like, I know it's convenient, but having to like mix your paints up and stuff. Plus, then you need a ventilation and a mask and stuff. Yeah, you got to get ventilation. You got to have a mask. You got to mix your paints. You can't just like pour paint neat into an airbrush. That'll clog it. And you got to like unclog your airbrush when it inevitably clogs. Like wash it out, clean it up, and everything. So we're just gonna do it by hand. Because I'm an old man. Is this your first piece for the army? Yes and no. This is the first one I'm painting as Flesh Eaters. I've got an existing Blood Angel successor for 40k, who I will be sort of retconning into, repainting eventually over time into the rest of my Flesh Eaters scheme. Also, hi Alexis, hope you're having a good day today. Thanks for dropping by. But this is the first one I'm painting like with the intention of it being Flesh Eaters. Yeah. So it's going to take a few layers, of course, to build it up, which is fine. We don't mind that, do we? Remember, you always want a number of thin layers rather than one thicken, because that's going to just wreck up your tank or whatever you're painting. You don't want to be obscuring the detail. So it will look shocking when I first start it, because I'm deliberately spreading it out a lot, keeping it very thin. That's okay. One thing I will know, so we're talking about tractor type tanks, and you might know this if you've been around for any of my before I had many people in chat, so I'm just going to talk at length about whatever my special interest is at the minute. I did a lot of talking about the development of tanks at the beginning of the 20th century. But one of the things that's interesting is when, you know, the French were the first to recognise the need for a tank, as we think of it now, in the First World War. But they kind of made it, you know, it were a bit of a mess, their whole like design process. So the British ended up doing it first. But they put together this thing called the Land Ships Committee. Because, you know, who knows better about mounting guns on an armoured platform than the Navy, right? Like, it makes sense. And they met up, you know, kind of teamed up with some designers, some engineers, some companies to start developing a tank, or what we'd now call a tank. The name came later. And one of the first designs they came up with was by a man called Sir William Tritton. And it was called the Tritton Trench Crosser, which is a fantastic name. And it's just a giant tractor. Like, it's literally just a tractor that they elongated the front, with the idea being that the front wheel, which was just a single like pair of wheels mounted, a pair of wheels mounted on a single thing, would hang over a trench, and then it'd hit the other side before the back wheels went into the void. You know, it didn't work. But that was the first attempt that the British did at making an armoured vehicle to cross the trenches. Because, of course, you got to remember that the original tanks weren't intended to like change the nature of warfare. They weren't really meant to be like this new thing that was going to change everything. They were really just trying to cross the trenches. You know, they needed something that could cross a trench. And then, you know, preferably break the barbed wire while they were crossing it. And we need to cross the trench, breach the barbed wire, so that the infantry can follow through. Everything else kind of comes secondary to that. You know, it's got to be armoured enough to withstand enemy fire while it does it. You might as well shove a gun on it so it can take out machine guns to make its job even more effective. And so they settled on like what we think of as more like a tank design. But at first it was just like, well, what will work? What if we make a giant tractor? What if we make a giant, like, I don't know how to describe it, like a cylinder with tracks running all the way around? What if we do this? There's all kinds of things. What if we have giant wheels with like little twizzling bits on them to try and give it traction? And all very experimental. It was a fun period when they were trying a bunch of different experimental designs as they tried to make a tank design for every need. Before we got to the boring, sensible period of tank design, it's best if we have only one tank. That way, the parts fit everything. Yeah, absolutely. Like I love the interwar, like the First World War into the interwar period when it comes to design of tanks, because like nobody knew what was going to be the best design. They're trying all sorts and trying all kinds of like weird designs, weird ways of looking at things. Oops, sorry. If you think actually the Baal Predator, with its heavy machine guns, basically, actually fits into that interwar period of what if we put a tank but covered it in machine guns? Obviously that doesn't really work, but there was that thinking in the 20s and 30s of maybe you don't need to fit a big gun on tanks. Maybe you can have like a tank for infantry, anti-infantry work, and a tank for anti-tank work and whatever. Like in reality, you wouldn't really have a vehicle like the Baal Predator. What you'd probably do is take a tank with a tank gun and just give it some high explosive ammunition to use against infantry. I googled land ships and now I'm on a page about overburden conveyor bridge F-60. And I didn't know I needed this gigantic vehicle in my life. There's something really fascinating. You can easily go down a rabbit hole looking at needlessly large designs of vehicles. Like it's very easy to do. Also, speaking of tractors, do you know the TET 1000? I don't actually, or TET 1000. I don't actually. Please tell us more, because I'm immediately curious. Yeah, I love going down YouTube rabbit holes of channels that cover obscure giant machines. Yeah, especially if they didn't work. Like, I love seeing something that's like a clear attempt at a thing. And you can see what they're going for, and you can see what... You can see like the need and the design, and it just don't work, and there's something really fascinating about that to me. The designs from those days kind of remind me of being a kid and wanting lots of cool different tanks in my imaginary army, all way too overburdened with gimmicks. Yeah, absolutely, Loomis. It almost does feel like a kid designing them, doesn't it? TET 1000 or TT 1000 is like a tractor with tank tracks on the front and back, so it can also traverse difficult terrain with them. I think that's why they're there. Oh, I've seen similar ones like this. In France, they had the Keras tractor, which is like got like it got like tracks on the back and then just like a giant wheel at the front. It's quite bizarre. That is, it's strafe with the tracks. It's very weird. Oh, okay, that is weird. That's even weirder than the one I was thinking of. Yeah, I'll have to look that up. Some of these areas I'm going to go back with a smaller brush to try and get where it sits around some of the details that I don't want to be red, like this is. Now, of course, before we get too far into it, there is one thing we should acknowledge actually about not the Baal Predator in general, but this specific Baal Predator. This one that I am painting right now. And that I did not buy this tank. This tank was bought for me by a very kind benefactor. I didn't steal it, Bira. I didn't steal it. It was bought me by a very kind benefactor. Friend of the channel, Loomis of Phelan. Who very kindly bought me this tank as a just as you know, as a thing, not for an occasion, just to, you know, keep going with the channel. I'm enjoying your painting streams kind of thing, which is tremendously kind, and I hugely appreciate it. Even if they misled me about why they needed my address. Not 100% happy with how I've done that, but it's alright. So the interesting thing about Flesh Eaters, of course, is they're all just in red. It's a plain design. So it does make it, I guess, a little bit easier. Everything's red. Some details and stuff I'll obviously be doing black or metal coloured as it requires, but the basic thing is very red. Yes. My machinations lay undetected for years, for I am a master of deception. I love that video. I tell my mum and dad about that while we're away. You can imagine having to try and explain that. But I made a go of it. But yeah, thank you, Lewis. I do really appreciate it. It is super kind of you to do that. The little like badge mounted on the front is a Blood Angels exclusive. It's a representation of the Primarchs. That's the kind of the gene father, if you like, of the Blood Angels. Sanguinius the Angel. He named them, you know, he named the Blood Angels, you know, after him, right? Like, there's a lot of people who love to take 40k and 40k factions very, very seriously. And, you know, on the one hand, I get it, it's fun, blah, blah, blah. But also, like, they have rituals involving blood. And their Primarch is the Angel, and they're called the Blood Angels. And then you've got, you know, the Iron Hands, led by Iron Hand. That's the Primarch of the Iron Hands is Ferus Manus, which is Latin for Iron Hand. And he has iron hands. Like, it's nothing sus there. Exactly, it's all perfectly normal. I don't know why anyone would suggest that you know, that the strange blood rituals of the Blood Angels are anything to worry about. No, don't look too closely. I'm sure their successors, the Flesh Eaters, Flesh Tearers, Blood Drinkers, Knights of Blood, etc., are all perfectly innocent. I just wanted to show my support. Well, thank you, Loomis. I do really appreciate it. It's very kind. They were formerly the Revenants, right? Yes, that's it. They were known as the Revenants until they found Sanguinius, who renamed them and tried to develop him into in background material. Wanted to develop them into the nobler thing they are now. I think there's some nice story ideas involved in that. The idea of Sanguinius as this beatific, saintly almost figure who's constantly holding back this absolute fury. And that it's kind of a mask. Like it's who he wants to be more than it's who he actually is. I think that's interesting there. I know writers who use subtext and they're all cowards. Exactly. Just put it out there. When you look at the Primarch names, it's tough to take 40k seriously. Absolutely. I love that, Let's see, we've got the world eaters who are famous for their ferocious temper, who are led by Angron. Angron, the Death Guard led by Mortarion. The Alpha Legion led by Alfarius. I mean, it's fun and I like it. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, let's go on now. My favourite, by the way, because it's got no relation to anything else, is the Dark Angels, whose Primarch is Lion L. Johnson. And The Dark Angel is a poem by a poet called Lionel Johnson. Just named after a poet. Interestingly enough, I believe the Dark Angel is about hidden homosexuality, which is interesting. Because I believe it was written when homosexuality was illegal in the UK, which it was, of course, until the 60s. That's so creative, yeah. I love that it's so close as well, Lion L. Johnson. Named after Lionel Johnson. I mean, come on. I love it. There's an inherent kind of goofiness to 40k that I really like. But in amongst all this horror and grimdark, there's just something kind of daft about it all. And I really like that. And I think there is room for both of that. I think there is room to have this inherent kind of daftness in with your grimdark. And let's not forget the Rogue Trader era, with all the talk of the Inquisitor, that famous Inquisitor, Sherlock Obi-Wan Clouseau. It's got a lot more po-faced, a lot more serious since the days of Rogue Trader, but Rogue Trader being the first edition of 40k, which some of the right-wing 40k fans like to try and pretend that Rogue Trader wasn't officially 40k or something, because it's goofy and it's silly. They try and pretend that that wasn't real 40k though, that was something else, because they have to be serious, right? It has to be serious because they make it so serious in their mind. Hello, Frezzo. Hope you're having a good day today. Thanks for dropping by. Hope it was a good Sunday for you. Me calling my thinly veiled Iliad rip-off something about Ant-Man. Yeah, exactly, be right. Yeah, exactly. been a long time since I've painted a Predator. I've painted like the other like Rhino chassis vehicles more recently. But it's been a long time since I've painted a Predator. I've got another one of these. Like another like Mars pattern Predators. See, GW kind of backed himself into a little corner a little bit. That if you don't know the backstory, I mean you probably mostly do. But 10,000 years before the setting of 40k, there's this big rebellion called the Horus Heresy, and the losing side have become known as the Chaos Space Marines. They leave and go flee to the Eye of Terror, which is a place where reality doesn't hold the way it should. So like they're still kicking around 10,000 years later because time doesn't really move in the way they expect, the way you might expect. So they established, or Games Workshop established, that the original like models they released were actually the older pattern of armor in use during the Horus Heresy. And then as time's gone on, they've made new versions of the tanks, new versions of the armour, which are like the present ones. Except the Chaos Space Marines always use them, so that must mean that they were also in use during the Horus Heresy. Because obviously once they update the Rhino to make this chassis, that they then use for all the Space Marine Rhino-based vehicles, for all the Chaos Rhino-based vehicles. They then get, it makes sense economically to use it for everything, right? But that means that the background has to kind of match it, that these were in use during the Horus Heresy, but it had already been established that they actually used the Deimos chassis. And that's my excuse for if anybody complains about me using a Mars pattern Predator in the Horus Heresy, because, well, it's too late. I think all big franchises write themselves into corners at some point and then fans get pissed off. Happened with Warhammer Fantasy, Warhammer 40k, Warcraft, probably Starcraft. You can know how similar those pairs of franchises are. Yeah, absolutely. I love that Starcraft was an abandoned 40k game. I know the Warcraft one's a bit murkier, isn't it, about whether it had originally been intended to be a Warhammer game, or if it was how do you pronounce it? I forgot the word. Like an in-house thing that was like done as a trial. I can't think of the exact term for it. Doesn't matter. Speculative thing. Like where where you do something up a bit and then like pitch it. How much rain in there? I can't get it to balance properly. Never mind. I wish they'd got more into making the Chaos versions look old-fashioned. Yeah, absolutely. I think that would have been really fun. They've done it a bit in some ways, but I think it would be much better if they actually made the Chaos vehicles like the older pattern ones. Like, because the Chaos Space Marines are going to get a re-release at some point, right? Hold on. According to this, it's not connected properly. Have we got an F? Are we back? Is it working now? Are we fixed? Has it worked? No. Oh, we're not back, huh? You still can't hear me. Oh no. Don't know what we'll do now then. Don't know what happened there. Just lost all signal for like 8 minutes or whatever it was. I just completely lost everything. Even my mobile internet wasn't acting properly. But then it's all kind of bit by bit come back online. So that's something. Thank you, Loomis. Yeah, I couldn't even see the messages you were leaving me. Like you were sending me on Discord and stuff, being like, "You've gone off air." I couldn't even see them. Everything just died. But thank you for hodling. Welcome back, everybody. That was annoying. I don't know what happened. Just everything went off. I did the check with Virgin Media, and I said there are no service problems in your area. Like, aren't they? Aren't there any service problems. Because it looks like there are service problems. Thank you very much. And the light on my modem changed from solid white to flashing white, and I don't know what that means. Honestly, I don't know. But it did. And then it went back to solid white, and then everything came back online. So I was actually using Discord as my guide, because that did the connecting thing, which I like never see normally. So I was like, as soon as it like reconnects, I know things must be starting to work again. But there we are. What are we doing? How are we all? Has everybody else just like gone now? So don't blame me if you had. I don't know to what extent we were all huddling. But here we are. We're back. We're talking about chaos vehicles, weren't we? If you still want to talk about that. I had to like carry on because I'd got some paint out, so I had to carry on and do a bit more of it. So let's carry on what we were doing with the old corn red. But yeah, Limited said, I wish they'd gotten more into making the Chaos version. Hi again, B-Rat. Thank you. Thank you for hodling. I wish they'd gotten more into making the Chaos versions look old-fashioned. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't know at what point I went offline. But I was saying they totally should. Off-stream progress, I greatly disapprove. I mean, understandably so. If it helps, I did it out of grim necessity. And only grim necessity. The paint would have dried up and been a waste. If I'd not done that, so. You know, I abhor waste. Is that self? Dang nabbit, not again. It's probably because everything's been disconnected and like everything's like reconnecting itself. Let's try that. Is that better? I think it's because it's like trying to reboot all its connections. It's been disconnected. I don't know why it started doing that recently, actually, because it never did it before. I do love working from a viewpoint of grim practicality. I thought you'd approve, Loomis. I thought if anyone approves of grim practicality, it'll be old Loomis. I made, so put a quick chia pudding in the fridge for tomorrow's breakfast. Oh, very nice, Brian. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm back working in the office again next week. Like, I'm back to normal, because we don't normally get to work from home. I've been able to for the past fortnight, which has been really nice. But of course, the boss wants us back in the office tomorrow. I've really liked working from home. It's so much better. Like, I love it so much. I am seriously thinking about looking at, like, if other hospitals do the working from home. Because it's, like, spoiled me. It's just so much better in every way. Like, sure, I miss my colleagues, I guess, but I'm not that, you know, don't bother me that much. I'm still on 2 days office, 3 days home. That's a lot better, isn't it? Like, theoretically, it won't matter which hospital it is either. I'm just always wary about those things. You don't want to, like, jump ship only to find they cancel it or whatever. And you've got yourself a job at a hospital up there in the country. And now you kind of stuck. You don't want that, do you? But it's certainly something I'm giving serious thought to, because it's just better. And I'm happier for it. So, you know. I guess because I'm not very social, it don't bother me. about not seeing colleagues. Well, I can do my socialising online. Like, I know it's not the same, I get that. And I'd probably have to do like some kind of in-person socialising if I didn't like see people at work and stuff, because otherwise getting no like social contact. But at the same time, yeah, it's still. I've had to adjust dramatically since COVID started. I used to go out all the time to concerts, movies, bars, grab drinks with co-workers every week or other week. Oh, that's interesting. See, I would never, as Lewis can attest, I've never been that social. I mean, like gigs, I guess. That's something that I miss. But then again, as it turns out, that would have probably come to an end anyway. Because like my friend who I always used to go to gigs with, she's not kind of been bothered about going to gigs with me since she got a boyfriend. So, like, it's very unfortunate, and I kind of thought it might be coming. I just hoped it wouldn't occur to the extent that it has. I've been replaced, which I'm actually very sad about. But I'm just trying to be, you don't want that on stream, do you? There we are. See what I'm doing as well is I'm just going over some we did earlier and just kind of, as I say, building up those layers. Because that's what we want. Plenty of thin layers rather than a few big ones. Has the phone noise stopped, by the way, now? I've turned everything off there. Seems to have, yeah, excellent. If you can see, this side I've done a second coat, and that side's only got one coat. You can see the difference, can't you, how dramatic that is? It does. It does look like a shocked face, doesn't it? It does. I had not noticed that, but it really does. Hi, Bam Bam. How's it going today? Thank you for dropping by. Kira's TTS has ruined me, by the way. In that I always think Bombo, North Carolina, 3PO. I can't help but... Can't help but think that every time now. It's going okay? Oh, that's great. That's it, B0, MB0, North Carolina, 3PO. Yeah. But I love the way text-to-speech like bots like break down syllables. Because like Narelon, they kind of gets that, right? It says Narelon Starfire, it's close enough. Well, that's close enough to Narelon, isn't it? But some of them are just fantastic. Serves me right for using all those zeros. To be fair, in my case, to be fair to the text-to-speech bot, like most people don't know how to pronounce Narelon either, so if we don't get the pronunciation quite right on my name, I think that's okay. Like one of the things I used to love, like, and Lewis said, streaming like raid someone different every time, is seeing how they try and pronounce Narelon. Because you can kind of see the cogs wearing sometimes. You can see them kind of going, wait, how do you pronounce that? Now, of course, it may take more than 2 layers, and that's okay. Some people will do these in like 10 very thin layers or whatever, which is a bit more than I can be bothered to do. I think it's not laziness, it's an economy of effort. Gotta pronounce Narelon in the original Elvish. Exactly, B-Rat. That's exactly right, and very few do. Very few pronounce it in its original language. Now, part of the problem as well you get is that the bigger the brush, the more likely you are to have visible brush strokes in it, which is why a number of thin layers is better than trying to do a few big ones, where your brush strokes will become really obvious. The bigger the vehicle, the bigger the thing you're painting as well, the more you want that like smooth layer without your kind of obvious brush strokes and stuff, because it becomes more obvious. Like, you don't want obvious brush strokes on like little models either, but it's about how apparent it is or not. I decided that today would be a gaming day, but I find it hard to tear myself away from Twitch and Discord. Yeah, I get that. Sometimes I think I'm going to be painting some models, I'm going to be gaming or whatever, and then I end up just like sat on Discord instead. Because one of the things that we'll all notice as I'm painting this tank is that it's bright red, or it's going to be a pretty bright red. It's not practical from a military point of view, but that's how Space Marines do things. So that's the custom. Like, it's fun from a modelling point of view and a painting point of view, even if we can all acknowledge that it's not very practical from a military point of view. Even if you are like genetically engineered super soldiers in highly advanced armour and stuff, like, it's still not practical to be painting your soldiers bright red. I'm playing Safe Haven while watching Twitch. Easy. Very nice. Hope you're enjoying that, Beaver. The trouble is playing games that require my whole computer to run. Yeah, I can see that. I can't split my attention in that way. Like, I can, but I end up not quite focusing on either thing properly, so I just don't enjoy it. Like, some streams I can like paint to. Like, I don't do that with Kira's stream. I can't do it with this. I've done it with like Luminous Nova, who we raided on Tuesday, because like when she's like performing, you're just watching a performance, aren't you? Like, it's not the same kind of experience, I think. It's a very different thing. So I might play a randomizer on emulator soon that I can multitask with. I got addicted to a jigsaw puzzle website last week. Oh, nice. We enjoy your emulator and your jigsaw puzzles. That sounds a lot of fun. Beeps again, huh? I wonder if it's coming from next door. It could be from next door. I'll have to do some further experimenting. Yeah, I had a gaming day planned, but I ended up doing a lot of reading due to animal shenanigans. Hope they're alright. My rabbit escaped from his run and hid under the shed, so I sat outside for a long while waiting for him to get bored and come out so I could catch him. Oh, that's no good, Lewis. That's like the Bonbon says, that sounds stressful. Hope everything's sorted out. It weren't too bad. He couldn't really get himself to any mischief there, but it was a pain. Yeah, because like you gotta just make sure, aren't you, and gotta wait him out and everything. So yeah, that sounds rubbish. Glad it's all sorted now. One thing I'm working on off stream, by the way, is doing the basing for that Imperial Knight that I've painted on stream. I'm really enjoying that, and I can't get over what it looks like actually together, because it goes. Having the Imperial Knight like assembled as a single piece is way different to having it in the other bits that I painted it in on stream, and it's really cool. When I've got the basing all done, and that's going to take a little bit longer because some of the stages with basing you have to like wait 24 hours before you can do anything else with it. So that'll take a little bit of time. But when it's all done, I'll put some photos on Discord. Because I'm really pleased and it looks really cool. GW are releasing a new kind of knight. Well, I say new, it was released in resin before. And that's coming out in plastic, and I kind of want that, but it's really expensive. It's really expensive. Well, actually, one worry was that I think that the hedgehog might be napping under there, and I'd hate for them to go into a fight. But I think he gets along okay with our local hedgehog. I've been sat out in the room with him at night, and when the hedgehog's gone past, they bump noses through the fence. Oh, that's cute. Like, I know it's different when there's, like, not a fence between them. And how they can kind of interpret that is different, but I think that's pretty cute. If they're just bumping noses and such. This stream is just like me getting out massive amounts of red paint, daubing it on a tank, you know. I'm trying to leave areas that I can actually handle the tank, which is why I'm not doing the whole tank first and then going back for second layers or whatever. I need to leave areas where I can actually handle it. It's interesting how it's becoming this steadily, like, as it dries, it's becoming like this dark red, where it's just quite a purpley red when I first put it down. It's going more of a maroon than a crimson, which is what than a burgundy, which is what I want. So I don't really like burgundy or crimson as a colour. But I do like maroon, my car's maroon. I think technically it's carmine. Not sure I can tell much of a difference on stream. Yeah, especially because as soon as I bring it out here, essentially the bluish light from the monitor completely changes how it looks, doesn't it? So I'd have to like do some photos, doesn't it, for you to be able to see the difference. But that is something to bear in mind when you're painting, that what the colour looks like in the bottle will be different to like what it looks like when you pour it on, and then what it looks like when it dries. Just something to be aware of, especially when if a company's marketing their paint, so however it looks on their website might not be quite how it looks IRL once you actually get down to it. I like as well that there's a little, you can see that a little bit standing up there. I like they've actually got that. It's like a little periscope for the driver. Obviously they've got a vision block on this side as well, but little driver's periscope. I mean, it's probably like a camera, but still, you get the You get the kind of gist of it. I was watching a video the other day about they were going in. Say we're at the tank museum here in the UK, which is the largest collection of tanks in the world, and the second largest collection of armoured vehicles in the world. And they were going inside. They've got a T-72, which was the Soviet main battle tank for a while. As you can tell from the name, it was made in 1972. It's the main tank being used by both Russia and Ukraine in that war. And they'd got a fella who volunteers at the tank museum, and he was kind of like going with the presenter round the tank, because he was actually East German, where he is, was whatever, East German. So he'd actually like crewed them as part of his military service. It was really interesting to hear him discuss like what it was actually like to be inside one of those tanks, because Western tankers tended to have a specific view of what Soviet tanks were like and how they were no good and all like that. It was interesting with because the presenter was also like a former tank crewman in the British Army, and it was kind of interesting to hear him talk about the different like battlefield philosophies, including whether you go into battle head up or head down, which is whether you go into battle with all your hatches shut, right? Which you'd think is the safe one, right? It's safer. You're not going to get shot by like a sniper or shrapnel or whatever, get caught by shrapnel or something. Or if you go like head up with the commander having the top hatch open so he can look out, so they can look out, which makes you more vulnerable, but also gives you a much better field of view. Like the commander can kind of like be sticking their head out and looking round, which also means you're more likely to detect a threat quicker, which means you can react to it. So it was an interesting thing to hear about that difference in how you should fight. It just made me think seeing the periscope on the Predator. Me, a Commodore in Warhammer 40k with the hatch open and my sword out, telling the tank driver to get me closer so I can hit the enemy. Yeah. Yeah, 40k tank crews definitely go into battle head up, don't they? Practicality be damned, this is important. Which I think, actually, I love that. I love that that's kind of the nonsense that's in 40k. Because it's meant to be like a dysfunctional system. Like, it's funny, and there's a lot of memes and stuff, but it's like it's a satire. Like, everything's nonsense in 40k. And it's easy to forget that if you're like really into it, like I am, or I've been over the years. Certainly, at times I've kind of like forgotten it to some degree. That, like, obviously the Imperium's bad, but it's easy to forget the satirical elements. As Loomis has said before as well, with the way like GW kind of markets it, as like aren't Space Marines cool? It's easy to forget that it's like it's bad, and a lot of this stuff is meant to be nonsense. Well, ironically, I like Commissar uniforms though, and I'd totally make them wear a cosplay. They're really cool. The Commissar uniforms are really cool. That's definitely true. I've seen people in Commissar cosplays before, and they look really cool. They're so ridiculously impractical and embellished. Yeah. I love seeing people do 40k cosplays. Because you can go relatively simple, or you can go so like over the top. Like, I've seen people doing like full scale like Space Marine cosplays. Like, there's a few who do it. Like, there's a lass who does, is it Iron Warriors cosplay? And she's got like essentially a full scale suit of Space Marine gear. So she's like stood on stilts inside the armour. It's fantastic. It's so over the top. Brilliant. Everything's like so. Like when she takes the helmet off, she looks really little. But obviously, when she's got the helmet on, like you can't really tell. It's so much fun. I think I've seen something like that. Yeah, it's so cool. There's a few. Like, I've seen a bloke who does Horus from the Horus Heresy. So he's got this massive Terminator armor, and his head looks tiny, and the opening at the front. I'd want to have a cybernetic eye and a face scar. Yeah, you want the big scar down here, right? And then the eye over. Yeah. That's like, for me, there's something innately 40k about the big face scar and the bionic eye. I don't know why, but it just seems like iconically 40k to have that. Even as much as like Space Marines and stuff, there's that. And all the tassels on the uniform, including tassels on the sword. Yeah, absolutely. I guess, like, first and foremost, they're religious zealots, aren't they? Where they're like showing devotion, showing loyalty, all that stuff coming ahead of practicality. And in a commissar's case, if I can get my words out, and I said kamikaze, I nearly said. They're like trying to impress the soldiers as well, aren't they? Like, look at me and don't think about the enemy. I'm glad they've brought back the special rule for the game that commissars can execute a soldier to make the unit pass a leadership test. Depending on the edition, sometimes they drop that. They brought it back. A line I like from Foundation, paraphrasing, "Ore is more important to Empire than practicality." Absolutely, it's all about show. It's all about show. You know, if you think of the British Raj, it was very difficult, or should have been very difficult, so it was towards the end, for like 40,000 British people to control 400 million people. But they kept up that show, right? They kept up the display to kind of awe people, to distract, to cast an image. Then it took a while for that to be dispelled. If you're interested in the kind of the British Indian case, they reckon one of the first things to really kind of dispel the image was the First World War. Because the First World War was on such a big scale, the British broke with their normal policy of not using Indian soldiers against European enemies. And it wasn't that they didn't think that, or to quote one kind of Indian writer, it's not that the British thought that Indian soldiers couldn't defeat Europeans, it's that they knew that they could, but they didn't want them to know that. You know, they didn't want people from Asia to realise that they could beat white people in battle, because that means they can beat British people too. So that was like the first step, really, to the end of British rule in India, because it's kind of like, wait a minute, if we can beat Germans, we can beat British people. And then, of course, the kind of the nail in the coffin really was the disaster of the surrender of Singapore, because like British people were absolutely defeated heavily by Japanese people. So that kind of proved that image of infallibility, of invulnerability, was just an image. Like, don't get me wrong, there's lots of other factors, but that's part of it. It's all about image. It's all about, like you say, awe. You know, like when they used to stage those grand durbars, and durbar is a traditional Indian ceremony, but of course the British kind of co-opted it and staged them on a grand scale to awe people. So yeah, that line from Foundation, I can't remember if it's from the books or if it's from the, if that's just in the series or what. Is absolutely true. It's about awe rather than practicality. I think that's something that kind of works with Star Wars as well. That, the Empire in Star Wars goes for that spectacle, that grandeur. And I know there's lots of like EU stuff about whether that armor works or not, but like Stormtrooper armor works or not, but that's part of the point. You need people to believe that your empire is going to work if you want it to work. As soon as people realise that they don't need you, or that you're exploited them, or that you can be defeated, or whatever, that's when your empire starts to fall. Another good line was, "A man can suffer indignity, empire cannot." Absolutely. Again, as soon as you start to get these reverses, it's the whole thing's built on a house of cards. And I think there's a lot of interesting things there about our own systems and how they can be brought down or lost. If you make God bleed, people will stop believing He's a God. Absolutely. I know that's in 300. But that's also the plot of The Man Who Would Be King. I love this show so much, even if it's not exactly like the books. It captures that grand epic sci-fi scale. I'm going to have to watch it. I'd not actually heard of it until very recently. I think I heard you and Kira talking about it or something, be right. I'd not heard of it before then. I mean, the books, yes, because I read them years ago. But I didn't know there was a telly program of it. I'll have to watch it. I was really big into Asimov as a kid. My dad kind of introduced me to it, because my dad was a big sci-fi fan. He got out all these books he'd had from 70s, and he'd bought them for like sixpence or 1 and 6, whatever. I don't know where it was. They've got they're old enough that they've got the old pre-decimal currency price on the back, which is always fun. But yeah, he lent to me and got me into Asimov, much in the same way as he got me into Tolkien. He also got me into Philip K. Dick, and as a teenager, some of the Philip K. Dick stuff didn't have to make you raise your eyebrows. Let me tell you that. My brother kept telling me to watch it, and then when the new season started coming out, I finally binged the first one. I can see that sort of thing happening. I was mainly into Philip K. Dick, and so was I, but Asimov was up there too, as a teenager, that is. Yeah, I think I probably got more into Philip K. Dick overall. But I loved Asimov. What I liked with Asimov was the way he essentially, and this is, I know, it's like the famous thing about him, but the way he laid down those 3 laws of robotics, of, here's how robots must function in this setting, and then spent dozens of stories working out ways around it. I think that was really clever. That whole thing of, well, if a robot could read your mind, would it take into account emotional damage as causing a human harm? Or if you make a robot really keen on avoiding damage, will it find ways to circumvent the first 2 laws if it knows it's going to risk harm, even though it's not supposed to be able to? And even something that had never occurred to me before, that the equivalent of instinctive behavior in machines would act exactly at the same speed as conscious thought, whereas in humans, instinctive behavior is far quicker. A machine wouldn't have that lag. I thought fascinating. I think the second book I ever purchased with my own money was Electric Sheep. Nice, let's do Android's Dream of Electric Sheep, the origin of Blade Runner. The first was Lord of the Rings. Well, I guess 3 books, but I'm counting it as 1. Yeah, Lord of the Rings is 1 book, really. Tolkien always wanted it to be 1 book. It was released as 3, partly as a money-saving measure. The publishers didn't know if people would really buy a 1,000-page book. So they released it as like, they would just release Fellowship of the Ring to kind of like test the waters a little bit. And then when that really took off, released the other 2/3. And the other was to do with problems with rationing, because paper was rationed. So in the early 50s, when, remember, the UK had rationing starting at the beginning of the Second World War through to the mid to late 1950s. And one of the things rationed was paper. And so the publishers couldn't necessarily publish big books like that. They had to do relatively limited runs of smaller books. You're constantly weighing up how much you can afford to publish in a particular run. I think the third one was Roadside Picnic, a great Russian sci-fi that inspired the Stalker movie and games, but I'm not sure anymore. Oh. Whenever I see Stalker, the film, I always think of years before I knew who he was, and I know, we've talked about him before, we know he's a transphobe now, he's come out as a transphobe now. But everyone's second favourite Slovenian, Slavoj Žižek. I remember years ago, before I knew who he was or anything about him, seeing him on telly. And he'd mispronounce, every time he pronounced it Stalker. And I remember at first going like, Stalker? What film's that? I've never heard of Stalker. And then realising eventually it was Stalker. Like, it took a while for me to twig what he was actually saying. They were saying Stalker. Like, I had no idea. I think it was Pervert's Guide to Cinema, which I think he made around the same time as Pervert's Guide to Ideology, which we watched in a Red Planet Hangout that time. Or I should say something about ideology. Shouldn't if I'm doing that. Like, I'm not wholly surprised he turned out to be a transphobe, honestly. But at the same time, it's disappointing. By the way, No Red Planet Today tweet just came out. Thanks, Beer. I saw Kira post about it earlier that she was thinking of maybe streaming later. I don't know if she changed her mind around that or not. But I know she ran about streaming maybe herself, because there were probably no Red Planet. I just keep checking, by the way, making sure that everything's still running here. Oh no, yeah, Frezzo, no. I don't know why there's no Red Planet today. Because you know how Kira asks for stories? There were some good ones, and then she's like, actually, no, there isn't there isn't one today. Also, there's going to be a stream in about half an hour. Kira's going to do streaming about half an hour. So because she's doing a workout at the minute. So shall we keep streaming for a bit, and then raiding to Kira? What do you reckon? How does that sound as a plan? Yeah, there's not much good that people know about Slovenia. I think the only good thing left is Laibach. Is that how you pronounce that? I don't know. Laibach, an avant-garde band. Oh, interesting. I've never heard of them. At least they tweeted it, and we don't have to go home for information half an hour into the scheduled show time. Yeah, that's good. That's a good pronunciation. Oh, thank you, Bira. I love languages, and then I encounter one I don't know, and I just have to guess. Nodders from Alexis, excellent. The webcomic Freefall is a great modern exploration of robotics, including one brand that uses the 3 laws. That's interesting, Lewis. As soon as I saw the webcomic, I genuinely thought, I know it's not accurate, but I genuinely thought you were going to start talking about Worm. As soon as I saw the Worm, I thought, ye gods, I've set off Loomis about Worm, and I didn't even know how. And we're not even talking about the superhero. You've conditioned me into expecting Worm at every turn. That's a web serial, but actually in Worm. Now you mention it. Now, some people don't paint the undersides of their tanks. I always do, because I'm a completist. And I guess a masochist, because it's just it gives you very little gain. There was a whole controversy recently when GW released for the Imperial Guard, the Astra Militarum as they're formerly called, a new tank called the Rogel Dawn. Don't like the name. But the tank is probably one of the best tank models I've ever seen. Genuinely. I think it might be one of the best sci-fi tank models. In that 40k sense of it being quite a realistic looking tank. A practical looking tank, not a too sci-fi one. And Lamar the tank bottom controversy, yep. So the Royal Dome's a big tank. I actually want to. I don't, I don't need them. I focus on my other projects. But I can just think it just looks really fun. So many options. You remember earlier when I was talking about I like details on a tank kit that make it look practical, like tow hooks and like smoke launchers and stuff. Stuff that you'd get on a tank. It's got so many of them, like spare track links, spare road wheels, which are the things that go inside the tracks, stowage, all that stuff, which I love. Like I absolutely love that stuff on a vehicle. That's a big weakness for me. And it's got loads of them. It's really well designed. Got loads of options. But there's a section missing at the bottom of the underside of the tank, which is, as Alexis Wright said, the tank bottom controversy. And of course, it's simply enough that they've done it to maximise what they can get on the sprue. What you can get in the kit is they've omitted just a selection. It's not even the whole bottom of the tank. They've omitted a section to make more space on the sprue so that they can get more stuff on there. And people were absolutely furious. Yeah, absolutely furious about that. And one of the questions people brought up was, yeah, but how often do people paint the bottom of their tanks? And a lot of people don't. They don't bother. Because in normal use, you never see it. Like you probably, some people will flip the tanks on the roof, but a lot of people won't, especially, if you've got like radio aerials or whatever on there that's going to break if you flip it over. Personally, if you want to show a destroyed tank, I would take the turret off and put like some grey cotton wool, you've stained grey, have that coming out the turret, because then it looks kind of like the tank cooked up and the turret blew off, which does happen, by the way. It's when the ammunition catches fire and detonates, but you just know it's there, like mold in a corner you haven't taken care of. That is true. Like I get, like I wouldn't want there to be a hole in the bottom of my tank, but the solution is to get a piece of plastic card and stick it across, because like it's just a flat piece, it's out of the way. But yeah, people were absolutely furious. It's one of those times where people described it as a targeted insult from Games Workshop, that they were like deliberately targeting fans out of hatred, I guess. And some people said, well, but which would you rather have? Would you rather have like the tank bottom or like extra pieces on the sprue? And their answer was, I'd rather have both. That's nice, but I get it. I get it. B-Rat says, I really need to start reading Worm, so him and Loomis can derail the stream at every turn. Please don't. Bad enough with Loomis, I don't need more of this Worm business, like derailing everything. I'll probably switch to one of my smaller brushes when I get around to the sponsons. What I kind of wanted to do with the Rogel Dome is get to one, do with the relatively close range armament, right? Stick sponsons on it, put the track, because you can have track guards on or off, but put the track guards on. It's also got armor plates covering the road wheels that you can put on or off. So put all the armor plates on and have that for like a relatively close support version. And then have the other one minus all those extra armor plates with the long range weapons. No sponsons, and have that as like a long range, like a fire support thing. I think that'd be really cool. It'd look really good. But my Imperial Guard is so far down my list of priorities that it'd be silly for me to do it now, even if the model is really cool. Community Worm read through. No. I'm actually not opposed to Worm. We'll all agree on a certain number of chapters a week and we can all sit and discuss them every Sunday. Some kind of book club. The bookworm club. Okay, that's quite cool. I like that beer. See, now you're making me want to do it just off that pawn. Just for the sheer pun of it. I'm vulnerable to puns. Like, a lot of people, don't like puns. I genuinely will laugh at puns. Like, I'll laugh at a pun. I love them. Tell you what I don't like, though. I don't like the new Space Marine vehicles. Like, I'm not doing that as like a boo Primaris bad. I mean, if you don't like Primaris, that's fair enough. I'm not going to tell you otherwise. I know Loomis isn't a fan. But, like, I'm not doing it as a boo Primaris. But I just don't like the design of the vehicles. There's just I don't know. I don't even know what it is about, because they're still like boxy like this. They just don't have the charm of like the Rhino chassis vehicles, and I don't know what it is. I genuinely don't know. At some point, I would like to get one of the or some of the Deimos pattern vehicles though, because I've got a couple on them from like first time round, before they were called Deimos pattern, when they were just, the Space Marine Predator or the Space Marine Rhino or whatever. Like, I've got the original Vindicator and an original Rhino. So the Rhino were like missing loads of bits because I got it second hand, and I reconstructed it with my own bits best I could, and then eventually found out that I'd actually put the right bit on. Like, I was just like, this piece from my bit straw looks close enough to the rear door of a Rhino. It turned out it was in fact the original rear door, because I didn't know. I was very pleased. I need to repaint them though in the Flesh Eaters colours. I know very little about the new Gilliman era lore and designs. And Loomis says people who like puns are no fun to tell puns to. This I believe. That's the last 5 to 6 years, right? Yeah, Primaris Marines were introduced in 2017. And since then, they've kind of expanded the range and expanded the vehicles and stuff. I don't mind the new Primaris Marines. I don't mind the look. I don't mind the kind of like squads with a single weapon loadout. That's like the hallmark of the new Primaris. Like, I honestly don't know. I don't mind them. But the vehicles, I just don't like them. Essentially, the lore is at some point in the past, Gilliman the Gilliman, like at the end of the Horus Heresy, got Belisarius Cole, this like bit of a radical tech priest of the Adeptus Mechanicus, to work on improving the design of Space Marines, because we've defeated the Chaos Space Marines now, but they'll come back, and so we need like an advantage. And he gave him access to some of the information from like the Primarch project, his Primaris, and he found ways to improve them. And I'm not clicked, 'cause I've not read all the lore. Either it took him 10,000 years to actually do the change, or it took him less than that, but there was nobody to actually authorize his results. So like he did his research, he came up with the ways to improve Space Marine design, and like there was no one with the authority to allow him to do anything with it, because it was ordered by Gilliman on behalf of the Emperor, and Gilliman was nominally dead, or was in a stasis field just shy of dying, and the Emperor was not exactly talking. So there was nothing that could be done about it. Then Gilliman came back, and Belisarius Cole could kind of go, "Oh, hi, Robert. Do you remember that thing you got me doing 10,000 years ago? Well, it's done. Can you give me permission to do it, please?" Spill stuff everywhere there. I don't mind the concept, but I hate they're phasing out the real Space Marines for him. I don't really mind. In fact, we'll talk about him. I'm just going to I mean, let's be honest. When I say I'm just going to be a moment, we all know I mean I'm going to nip to the toilet. I'm going to do that, and then we'll talk some more if that's all right. I'll see you in a moment. I'm back. I hope everyone's still here. Hope my stream's not died while I nip to the toilet. Right, let's see. I like Belisarius' call, and that's about it. I need to read up more on the rest. Change in my empire? Yeah. Sounds like my company. The idea of issuing a change and then not being able to put it in position. Yeah, the say so from somebody who went there to do it. That happened in like the UK as well. Like at one time there was like a group in like Buckingham Palace who laid out a certain meal every day for people who'd not been alive for like a century, but no one had the authority to countermand it because they were dead. They died, 50 years earlier or whatever. So that kind of nonsense does exist in real life. Loomis says, I'd probably be pretty shy about announcing the super blasphemous experiments I've been doing until the Pope Jr. got back to confirm it was cool. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The Imperium doesn't generally go... I mean, even the Adeptus Mechanicus, that Belisarius' call is a part of, doesn't really go for change like that, do they? So, absolutely. Yeah, but Loomis says, I don't mind the concept of Primaris Marines, but I hate that they're phasing out the real Space Marines, so they're called Firstborn or Old Marines for them. If they bring out new Scouts and Land Speeders, and it looks like Space Marines will continue to exist, I'll give GW a second chance and keep collecting them. But as it stands, it looks like they're mid-squatting, and I know I didn't get far into this army, but still, this will mean that GW has squatted 3 of the 4 armies I've collected from them. It's not a record that inspires trust, and I need that to engage in a long-term hobby. Absolutely. We don't know about new Scouts yet. Land Speeders, no. The Land Speeders of old aren't really being done anymore. There is the like Primaris equivalent of Land Speeders, the Hammer Strike Speeders, whatever they're called. The ones crewed by good old brother Tinnitus. So that's like, they're doing like Primaris equivalents or Primaris replacements for a lot of them. They have said that they're not getting rid of everything, in their words, which I quite liked. Tactical Marines will continue to ride around in rhinos for the long into this edition. So yeah, squatting, by the way, if you don't know, is there used to be a 40k army called Squats, and they were not just dropped, but they were actually officially like killed off in 40k lore. It was a Tyranid hive fleet got to their planets and ate them all, and so squatting has become this term for like getting rid of an army. So yeah, Space Marines are still around. It depends how you define it, isn't it? Like Primaris Marines are essentially a replacement. If they'd just done new Primaris versions of existing Space Marines, I don't think we'd be having this conversation at all. If they were just like Primaris Tactical Marines in Mark 10 armor or whatever, I don't think any of us would bother. But it's because they're not doing that. And of course, partly it's mostly just to get people to buy stuff, right? They want Space Marine players to buy more Space Marines. And, if there's a new unit, people will buy it. Whereas if it's just a version of an existing unit, people who've already got that unit they're not going to buy more of them. So that's what it is. And Space Marines, you have to remember, are such a massive part of the GW's profits, let's be honest. I've not got the figures for how much of 40k sales are Space Marines, but it's got to be a huge percentage. I know before Warhammer Fantasy Battles were cancelled, Space Marines actually, just Space Marines, not even all the different versions of Space Marines, just Space Marines sold more than the entire Warhammer Fantasy Battle game and all 15 factions from that and all the models and armies and everything from it. So Space Marines are absolutely massive. You've essentially got a bit, I've referenced this before on stream, but the Dutch disease, which is a term for, in the 70s, was it 60s? They found a lot of natural gas in the Netherlands. And so because that was, like a big deal, it was very profitable, both like the Dutch government and like private companies started chucking in a load of money into natural gas extraction. And what that meant, of course, is everything else kind of suffered as the economic focus became more and more about natural gas, because that's where the money was. But then, of course, when there was a drop in the price of natural gas, that meant the Dutch economy was kind of fracked for a while. There are ways to avoid that, but that's what happened for the Netherlands. And I think there's a little bit of Dutch disease when it comes to Space Marines. Like, they're such a big part of 40k and such a big part of GW's like profits and everything that they like can't not keep introducing new units and keep like putting the focus on them. But I think everything else suffers for it, which is a shame. Says I, as the Drukhari player with me like 20 odd model range compared to the Space Marines with 120 models. 120 units in the range. If they were just a new look for Marines, I'd probably have rolled with that. I can totally understand that one. Yeah, definitely. Also, there'd been female Primaris, that would have been nice. And Alexis says, Primaris was a big missed opportunity to introduce Space Marine women. Absolutely. I do think it was really did miss a trick there. Like, it's been implied for a while that it's possible. Because like the explanation of why it doesn't work doesn't make biological sense. It doesn't make scientific sense. So, it comes from a single article. Well, it comes from a little passage that was originally published in White Dwarf in 1989. That was done to explain why there weren't Space Marine, like female Space Marine models. We've got that confirmed by bigwigs at GW that they didn't make female Space Marine models because the female, like 40k models that predates 40k, but would be 40k models, didn't sell very well. So because of the way that this brand new like plastic squad worked, they couldn't get female models in that people would pay for because they would get rejecting them because sexism, misogyny, and all that, the patriarchy. So they came up with like a law reason, like an offhand law reason, to explain why they were only men. And it was published twice, once in 1989, once in 1991, and then not published again for a long time. And the explanation about how the Space Marine process only works on male tissues doesn't make sense. Unless we're saying that like the Space Marine process only affects testicles or something. But even then, like, that's not even, like, is that what we're defining as male tissue? Is that how they're defining it? It doesn't make sense. Because, of course, I would be quick to point out you don't have to be male to have testicles. So, like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't add up. And so it's, is that still... Then, of course, they republished it in the second edition of the Horus Heresy rulebook, which is a real shame. I don't know who did that, but I wish they hadn't. Because that was a real opportunity. For them to just not say that. That's all they had to do, just not say it. But they did say it. And so with Primaris Marines, like, we've got a lot of dialogue, a lot of talk about how altering the Space Marine process would allow women. And it's entirely possible that, it could always have been women, right? There are hints there in the law, if you want to call it. I don't like really calling it the law, because some people who do are pillocks. But there's a lot of hints in the law about how actually they probably could do that. And I think that would be fantastic if GW just introduced that thing where somebody's like, Belisarius Call or whatever, is like, have we actually ever tried making female Space Marines? And then Gilliman kind of goes, there's a reason, right? And they're like, I don't know. And they try it and it just works. And they're like, oh. Like, I think that would be very fitting for the Imperium if they did that. I think culture has moved on enough that the original reason of female Space Marines not getting bought wouldn't be an issue anymore. 100%. I think it's not just culture, but like nerd culture. I think it's become far more open and far more accessible to non-men, shall we say. Like, there's still a lot of problems, I'm not denying that, but I think it's moved on enough a lot that there's a genuine demand for it now. In a way that the not just that people would buy them, but there's like a genuine demand now. But let's be honest, the reason they didn't is it would upset the fascists and make a significant part of GW's fan base. Now, I'm not actually sure how much of the fan base is like fascist. There's a lot of them. I don't know if it really does make a significant part, in that online, particularly from the US, although there are a lot of British people who like this, but you see it particularly from like Americans, because wargaming is much more is an even more right-wing thing in the US than it is in the UK. Partly because of how popular wargaming is amongst the US Armed Forces. Like, it's, for some reason, like wargaming, particularly 40k, is like a really popular thing in the US Army and the other branches of the US Armed Forces. So I think that can skew it a bit, although obviously not everyone in the US Army is a right-winger. But, But how much their fan base actually is like made up of these people, or how much they actually make up, is something I'm very curious about. Because very often the very loud fascists who talk about being ardent 40k fans aren't. And that they'll talk about how they're like the real 40k fans and everybody else is a tourist. But then when you actually probe deeper, they like don't actually collect models and they don't play the game, and they don't. It's like I've talked about it before about the wikiization of media, where people read wiki articles instead of engaging with like the original material. And I think that's something that comes up a lot when you're dealing with these like 40k fascists, is that they don't actually seem to like buy anything or get involved in the hobby. So I can understand why GW is cautious, because these people are the loudest 40k fans. But whether they're actually a big part of the fan base who are going to be affected economically is another question. Going to affect GW economically, I mean. That's not to say they don't exist, but it's like another issue where I just don't know. And certainly when I've been in person, because I've been to plenty of tournaments. It wasn't 40k, it was Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And like the vibe was completely different to what you see online. Like all this online with all these like right wingers, being like very overtly, kind of like 40k is ours kind of thing, is certainly not what you kind of encounter in person. Again, doesn't mean it's not the case as much, but it's a very different vibe. My impression is that GW certainly thinks it's the case. Yeah, I'm not sure if GW thinks it's the case or if they're just not sure. Certainly, and here's the joy of capitalism. They did something other month, I can't remember what it was, and the online like fascist kicked off a lot, and the markets picked up on it. Right? GW share price dropped because people online, like these these fascists online, were moaning about GW's business decisions. And GW is a big business operating under capitalism, and so they listen to the markets. Unfortunately, it's one of the problems of capitalism, of how it erodes stuff like this. They're making like business decisions based on how the markets will react, not on what's like the best product. So I think the management of GW are very cautious about doing anything that's going to like upset the markets. And so what they've done is, if you look at a lot of like lore recently, novels and stuff, they've slowly hinted at the idea that female space marines are possible. They've kind of done that more and more. In Deliverance Lost, which is a Horus Heresy novel about the Raven Guard from quite a few years ago now, when Corvus Corax, the Primarch, is given access to like some of the research that Belisarius Cawl would later use to make Primaris Marines, he notes that would basically allow you to turn any child into a Space Marine. And so it's never explicitly stated, that involves women, but any child includes non-men, right? In another one, a space wolf ends up working with some women on Fenris, and after the battle is over, he says something like, just keep giving us strong sons and we'll, there'll always be a space wolf so long as you give us strong sons. And she's like, just sons? And he kind of looks at her and goes, good point. So like, there's definitely like a move towards it. It's just not enough. Like, it's not enough at all. I think, will they do it eventually? I don't know. I think they're being very, very cautious, too cautious. What really doesn't help is that a lot of the big, like, 40k YouTubers, those infamous lore YouTubers that I've talked about quite a bit before, they kind of are right-wingers. And so they make a big stink online about their own, like, fascist views. And it's disgusting. Like, I don't want to name names. I'm not trying to, like, cause a trouble and cause drama, but one of them got a cease and desist letter from GW to stop, like, making videos about Warhammer. So that tells you something. It's, by the way, very funny. But there are others who are less overtly fascist, and so get away with it. And usually the quality of their videos is actually very low, right? And they're not doing good 40k. It's what I've talked about before, this idea of reading, like, summaries off of, like, the 40k fandom wiki, If they're slaves to capitalism, what can I do to influence them other than not to buy? Well, indeed. It's a difficult one. I suppose the answer is that we need to outshout the fascists, I guess. That we need GW to regard us as the block that will upset the markets if they don't. Right? Rather than the fascists. But how you do that, that's a level of organisation stuff that's more difficult. That's probably the way. Well, I've been around long enough to know there's been plenty of boycotts and stuff over the years, but I don't want to engage with the fascists enough to do that. Oh, you don't have to engage with the fascists. I don't want you to engage with the fascists. It's about just putting our own ideas across in enough fora, loudly enough, that we're the ones who get heard, not them. Or at least a contending viewpoint. Because GW dances around this a lot. Like, they've put out a number of statements over the past few years, basically criticising right-wing interpretations of 40k. And, like, the actions of kind of, like, right-wing, inverted commas, fans. So, like, there's movements, gestures in the right direction, but it's just not enough. So far, it's only gestures. Although the gestures themselves are enough to get people really mad. One of my favourite things is when the Warhammer community page put out a statement condemning racism. Like a lot of these, like you say, these 40k fascists claimed that the Warhammer community team aren't actually part of GW. That they're like a fan group, and they don't actually belong or represent 40k. Even though, like, they are, like, they're employees of GW. It's just a myth. And then, of course, once that came obviously to be proven to be false, right? Then they were claiming that it wasn't actually the Warhammer community team that did it. It was a rogue intern who'd made the statement and nobody knew. Yeah, they're just straight. Well, why didn't they take it down then? Oh, because they're afraid of the woke mob and all of this. It's just like layers and layers of nonsense, and to be honest, it's really funny to me. Like it's horrible that they kind of like have this influence, but the desperation that the fascists have in trying to like preserve 40k is like their thing is very, very funny to me. I wish they were afraid of us. Yeah. That'd make things a lot better, wouldn't it? Fear of the woke mob. If only. If only. But yeah. Well, it's the classic thing. It's what Umberto Eco observed in I can't remember what it's called. You know Umberto Eco, the writer he grew up in fascist Italy, and he did that thing about if beer out is here, you'll know what it's called, but I can't think. But he did an article which I've read where is it Earth Fascism? Is that what it's called? Where he talks about like the I sometimes get into it with them at metal concerts. It's been on a long while now. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's Umberto Eco, and he wrote about like the basic like the Earth Fascism. Thank you, Birat. Birat is very knowledgeable on theory, far more than I am. But yeah, he talks about like the basic principles that underlie fascism, but also that one of them is the enemies are always the enemies of fascism are always really strong and laughably weak, and that's kind of what we see with that. That on the one hand, were these powerless, pathetic soy boys who spend all the time seething online because reality doesn't match up to us. But on the other hand, we're also this dominating force that GW is afraid of. Like, it don't make sense. It don't work. I'm a nerd. And also I constantly listen to video essays during remote work. See, that explains it. I probably should, but I can't focus on my job when I'm listening to, like, words. I have to just have, like, music on or something. Yeah, it's a very classically fascist thing to pretend that we're like the left is really powerful. Eco also said that it was why fascists never win wars, in his words, or very rarely win wars. Because how can you accurately like fight a war if your enemies are constantly super strong, constantly super weak? Like, you can't judge the strength of your enemies. I mean, it's what got Hitler into trouble. One of the things that got Hitler into trouble in the Second World War was he assumed that the US would never get involved. Partly because he thought he had common cause with him, but also at times, but also because he thought that the US, being of like many mixed ethnicities, would represent a kind of weakness. Would have a weakness coming from that. Because that was his, fascist inability to accurately judge things. Like, he didn't look at population or resources or anything like that. He looked at his own ideology and assumed that reality would match accordingly, and it didn't. Most of my job I can do in my sleep. The level of programming that most business stuff needs is like high school level. I do interesting stuff as a hobby, but like you, I can't pay attention to essays when I'm doing that. Yeah, my job isn't difficult, to be honest. Mostly, like, some of the stuff is a problem. Like, it's a bit of an issue, but it just requires more of my concentration than I'd like. It's why I don't. It's why I don't like. To be honest, it's why I don't read a lot in my free time, because I spend all day reading. I spend all the day reading medical information. So then I'm in my free time. It's difficult for me to read so much. It's annoying. Yeah, reading words all day. Just constant medical information. When I'm doing when we've been doing remote work, it's not as bad because it's all typed up. When you're reading the notes as well, handwriting is more brain effort to focus on, Especially infamous doctor's handwriting. when you have to turn to your colleague and say, "Can I borrow your eyes?" What the heck does this say? Oh, got something in my eye. I've even seen email chains where we've like emailed something off to a surgeon or whatever, going, "What does this actually say?" There we go. You know, what does this actually say? And the surgeon's going like, "I don't know, I can't read it." And they've emailed it to another surgeon who's like, "Yeah, I can't read that either." But it could be this. Like, it could be, oh, maybe it's that. And they're just surgeons discussing each other by email, like, what does this even say? I don't know. I'm amazed all medical records aren't digital at the source in the year of our Lord 2023. Yeah, we had a big push in the UK, like 18 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that, to digitise records, and it just went horrendously wrong. It cost like billions, and just went really wrong, and they decided to... That were under Tony Blair's Labour, by the way. And they decided to just pack it in, and nobody's tried since. There's a gradual move towards digitisation. Certainly it's happened at our hospital, but it's very slow. Partly there's... I mean, if you know the situation, the budget relative to inflation and everything for all like NHS stuff in the UK has absolutely like plummeted. It's just absolutely plummeted over the years, so there's less like money to invest in things, including digitisation, which would be really beneficial, but there's just not the capital to like chuck into it. Like even hospitals like the one I work at that were running essentially really well budget wise is now running into massive deficit, which shouldn't be an issue, right? You know, it's public healthcare, but we've been, you know, Tories have been in power for 13 years. So that's what they've done to us, and you can see it in loads of stats, and I've talked about it before, I'm sure we can talk about it at length another time. So there really should be, but it's very gradual. And partly a lot of doctors don't like change, they don't like doing things differently. So it's a matter of, as those doctors retire and younger doctors who are perhaps a bit more willing, or doctors who are just a bit more flexible, come in, it changes things. I had pretty bad asthma from birth, so my medical record is like nearly 3 inches thick with paper, but luckily it all pretty much got better after puberty. That's great, but you're right. Sometimes asthma does clear up, like that juvenile asthma as they call it, and it just like clears up, which is great. But yeah, I mean, I've seen, you know, patients who've got like 20 odd volumes of notes, and each one's like, each one's like that, you know, and they've got like 20 odd of them. It's wild. One thing I really dislike about conversations about fascism, is that we tend to fall back to Umberto's definition instead of one of the leftist ones. But I'm also not well versed in the latter ones to actually propose an alternative myself, echo as a liberal. Yeah, I agree with you, Frezzo. I think it's a convenient definition. I think that's the main thing about using echo, is that they're convenient. It's convenient, like it's easy to understand. You know, you can kind of point to that and go, here you go, this is an easy definition. But yeah, I'd rather a proper leftist one. But of course, you know what it's like. Whenever we tend to do anything left wing, we always end up with like 1,000 different interpretations, and we have this great tendency on the left, don't we, to kind of get down to like technical definitions and debates about how exactly it works, you know. And I'm not saying that's always true, but so often it kind of happens, and you see that, don't you? It's like the old thing, isn't it, where somebody's saying, what should I do politically? And a left-wing person's like, well, here's a reading list. And a right-wing person's like, you've done nothing wrong in your life. It's them. You know, that's a stereotype, but splitters, exactly, Loomis. Revisionists everywhere. It didn't fully go away, but it wasn't a daily problem, and it got really better with veganism. That's brilliant. You see, veganism has so many health benefits. I know that's not like why we do it, but it has so many health benefits as well. I need to see if Renegade Cut had a shorter definition. Yeah, it's Did I get distracted about something? Yeah, and I'm not criticising like left wingers for that. I don't want you to think I'm taking like a liberal position or something. But we do have that tendency, don't we, to go down these like ideological lines, and I get why. But then I just remembered I can't remember what it was. Some conversation in Kira Chat's Discord once. And I was like, can we at least just call each other revisionists? Like, can we at least do that? And Imogen, Imogen, one of the witches, said, nah, I don't know your political tendency, but you're a filthy revisionist. I was like, well, thank you. That's all I wanted. But yeah, Fraser, I do completely agree that it would be better if we had a proper left-wing definition of fascism. One quote from some old-timey vegan guy went something like, are you vegan for health reasons? Why, yes. I'm vegan for the health of the chicken. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I know I've referenced it before, but B-Rat will recall a certain member, someone who was formerly in Kira Chat's community, who said that they would be persuaded by environmental arguments for veganism and didn't really care about the animals, which was like, it got my teeth so on edge. It's one of the things that's like, when something really sticks in your mind and like it's just something that you can't like get away from when you think about it. That of like, yeah, who cares about that kind of thing? What about the environment is I really liked a really short introduction to fascism because, as it points out at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter whether we can classify something as fascist or not. What matters is the impact that something is having on the world. Like, it doesn't matter whether, say, Trump is a fascist, as much as it matters that he's a serial, assaulter of women, racist, and just an awful person in many ways. Oh, and he's orange. yeah, it's I can see that argument as well. Then you can get into all those definitions, can't you? It's like we were talking about it the other day on stream about right-wingers getting mad that essentially a right-wing, he was like a liberal, so a right-wing historian had criticised Sparta, right, and they were really mad about it. And this has been going on, and there's been an article published saying that, like, the Spartan, the headline was, it was in the Atlantic, I don't know much about that publication, and it said, the Spartans were proto-fascist losers. And the right-wingers were really up in arms about that, and they were trying to say, well, they're not proto-fascist and all this. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because Sparta were awful. Like, even by the standards of the ancient world, Sparta were awful. Like, the slavery practiced in Sparta was worse than that practiced in other Greek city-states. So, like, in a way, it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't really matter whether that definition of proto-fascist losers is accurate or not. What matters is they were awful. I said it on stream on Tuesday, I've got to kind of repeat it. One of the things that really makes me laugh is that whole when Philip II sent them the message saying, shall I invade Sparta? Shall I come as a friend or foe to Sparta? And the Spartans said, neither. So he said, if I come, I'll destroy you. I'll take your land, I'll drive you out. And they replied, if. And like, right-wingers love to leave it there. Like, wow, the Philip II was driven away by the Spartans' cutting witticism. But he did go. And he did just, like, drive them out and take their lands. So, like, all that of, if I come, I'll destroy you. But he did. He just did it. It's like the other one, the famous one from the Battle of Thermopylae, which I know is probably a horrendous mispronunciation, by the way, where the Xerxes ordered the Spartans to disarm and give up their weapons, and Leonidas replied, Molon labe, which means come and take them. But Xerxes did. Like, he did come and he did take their weapons. So it's, like, apparently, like, it's become this thing of, like, come and take him as a statement of defiance. But, like, Xerxes did. Like, he did go and he did take this stuff. So to me, that's really funny. Just as an aside, but slightly away from what we're really talking about. It's just one of those things I find really funny. Also, like, the Spartans went to war against Alexander the Great as well and lost. But it wasn't even Alexander the Great himself. It was one of his lieutenants. And Alexander referred to the war against Sparta as a battle between mice, which is like speciesist, but you can kind of see what he was going for there. Like, imagine, by the way, that you're the foremost military power in the known world, and Alexander refers to a battle against you as a battle of mice. Oh, oof. Very funny. And of course, later on, the Spartans tried again. They went to war with the Macedonians again and lost again. Yeah, fascists love weird ahistorical origin myths. Absolutely. They absolutely love it. It's an imagined past, isn't it? It's one of the things that you see with fascism. I mean, everybody does it. But one of the things you see with fascism is that imagined past. The importance of these like origin stories, of these myths. Whereby they can create this, because fascism is always about looking backwards. It's inherently reactionary. As much as it bills itself as being modern and modernistic, it always looks backwards. That's like a cornerstone of fascism. In fact, it's probably an Umberto Eco's thing, seeing as we were talking about it in his fascism, right? This constant, like, we need to go back. And that's something we see so much nowadays, aren't we? We're seeing this repeated thing. I think it's why it's so it's so useful that there are historians who are actually criticising that, even if they're liberals or whatever. The fact that they're going, yeah, this is inaccurate, I think it's actually really valuable. Got to get back to that past that never existed. Yeah, absolutely. They love doing it. They're always doing it. Like, it sort of does. It doesn't seem to matter to them. I mean, if they know, they don't seem to care that it's not real. It's not part of the origin story. Maybe a shorter definition, if you know what communism means, is that in general fascism is always anti-communist in action. Yeah, definitely. I know that runs into trouble then of what is communism. Like, I know he's got a lot of issues himself, which is kind of caveats I'm always putting on, right? But like Richard Wolff's sarcastic socialism is when the government does things, and the more the government does things, the more socialist it is. And if the government does enough things, that's communism. But yeah, absolutely, because that's what it slams the volume of the first volume of Das Kapital on the table. Exactly, just for like, here you go. But yeah, absolutely. Fascism is necessarily anti-communism. It's born out of a reaction to communism. It's an attempt to suborn that kind of revolutionary spirit into a reactionary direction. And that's something we see in Germany, Italy, Spain, the UK, like wherever fascism arises, Romania, for example. It's always that direct, like, turning of that revolutionary spirit away from the upper classes, away from the wealthy, away from the bourgeoisie, into targeting minorities. I kind of want to recreate that hackers scene where they pull out all their tech books and put them on a table, but with communist, anarchist, vegan, feminist theory books. I'd like that, would be right. I watched Hackers for the first time the other week. I like it because of how ridiculous it is. Like, it's so wild. And I also love that the hacker aesthetic from Hackers has influenced real world hackers. Like, that's brilliant. Sort of, I wish I were that cool. Hack the planet, exactly, Bonbon. Hack the planet. And the books are all actually real books. I literally have the Dragon book on my shelf. Okay, I really like that, actually. I like that. Although one of my favourite things in any film is when they cite, like, they use like a book or a program or whatever it might be, and it's not what they claim. Like, that's always one of my favourite things. When I give food to the poor, they call me a saint. When I ask why the poor have no food, they call me a communist. Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember where that quote's from, actually, Lewis. My face when I figured out the main actor in Hackers plays Sherlock Holmes in Elementary. Oh, is it Johnny Lee Miller? Is that his name? It is, isn't it? I've never seen Elementary, but I've seen enough adverts for it. Johnny Lee Miller, somebody like that. Yep. Oh, okay, nice. Yeah, it is, isn't it? I always forget that he's a person who exists, honestly. When we watched Hackers in the Squad last time, I said Hack the Planet at the very beginning before I realised that this was actually the movie that was from. I didn't know it was from there either, Frezzo. I honestly didn't know. Like, I thought Hack the Planet was maybe like a meme or something, but I didn't. I had no idea where it was from. Now, of course, as I'm going, some of this I may decide needs to be black or needs to be a different colour or something. And that's okay. We can just like redo that later. Part of the reason, I mean, apart from like the many reasons I've already outlined, part of the reason you want like thin layers when you're painting is so that you can go back and change stuff if you need to. Painting is inherently, an additive process. If you make a mistake, you paint over it, which is why it's really important to make sure your layers are thin, because then, it doesn't matter if you need to paint over it a number of times, because, it's not too thick. I always get Hackers and the one with the kid who gets access to the US Defense Nuclear Launch System one mixed up. War Games? I think War Games. Yeah, I can believe that. I've not actually seen War Games. Or at least I've seen bits of War Games. I remember there being a game, like when I was a kid, called War Games that had absolutely nothing to do with the film. Which is like, that's like a computer game. I read the demo. And that's like an interesting choice, because why would you make a game based on a film that has nothing to do with the film, like the plot of the film or anything? I guess it's kind of like the film Lawnmower Man has absolutely nothing to do with the book Lawnmower Man. Like, it's literally pretty much just the title and like the names of some characters or something. And supposedly that Stephen King was really mad that they'd use the title of his book to make a film that had nothing to do with it. By the way, I think Kira's starting soon. Excellent. So when Kira goes live, when she, I don't know if she's doing a starting screen or whatever, but like when Kira's live, we'll all go over. So we'll just keep an eye on that. If I don't notice, please sing out when she does. I just noticed the title change. Oh, Birat's lurking. Birat's ready. To be fair, if I'm at home and it's like in front of Kira's normal start time, I do that. So I'll trust you to keep an eye on that for me, Birat. Thank you, because I've gone like way over I would normally, which is great. Thank you everybody for keeping me company while I do it. I know what I'm doing is not very interesting, right? Because I'm painting this tank. it's all just the same colour. It's just, I mean, look at the progress. I mean, look at that. That's a lot of painting done, but it's not exactly a thrilling thing we're doing. What I aim to do, by the way, is I'm going to do some weathering on this, because if I want to use this like primarily as a Horus Heresy era thing, everything should look a bit battered. It's the most intense, which is not the most intense war in human history. It's the most intense war in the Imperium's history. And so everything should look a bit worn, and, probably maintenance and stuff would be getting skipped and stuff like that. So that's what I want to go for. It has Will Wheaton credited in it, but his scene got cut, so he's in the background crowd for 1 second. That's great. See me. In Will Wheaton like 50 now, which is distressing. Like, he's in his 50s, isn't he? Which is like the kid in Next Generation is now in his 50s. It's like I've been on this kick recently of watching those, like, is it real? How real is it videos? I think there's like a YouTube channel called like Insider or something. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what they are, but they do these videos where they get like a real expert to look at scenes from films and telly and say how real they are. And like some of them are like actual historians that I know, so I've been watching some of them. And one of them was this like Kenjutsu master of he's in Tokyo. He's got all his gear on, his kimono and his hakama trousers and everything like that. And he's just talking about these films. He's very sedate, very dignified, That's what he keeps talking about, the dignity of the samurai. And then they got to one of these films from the 50s, I think it was. Whenever it's 60s maybe, whenever this film came out. And this bloke's like, oh yes, I saw this film 58 years ago when I was 16. I was like, how? Like, he didn't look like he was in his 70s, but just the thought of just being like, oh yeah, I saw that 58 years ago. I was like, oh, that's a long time. It may remind me of that thought of like, Will Wheaton's in his 50s now. You don't expect that. I wonder if he's sick of people shouting, "Shut up, Wesley!" at him by now. For sure he has a giant blacklist on social media. I sort of don't blame him. I'd get fed up too. I get fed up with the same repeated jokes, so I can understand him. War Games is from 1983. I don't know why, but in my head the two movies were always contemporary. Yeah, sometimes that happens, done it, and you just have an image in your mind of when a film's from, and it's not actually. I completely get that. I know. Oh wait, now I might be confusing War Games with The Last Starfighter. I have to fact check myself. I've not seen that one either. I know. What's his name? Brian Blessed doesn't mind people shouting lines from Flash Gordon at him. Like, he said that before. Which is quite nice, at least. He's like, I don't care, Gordon's alive! And all that. Although, as an aside, what's really interesting about that is, if you actually watch Flash Gordon, the Gordon's alive line is actually really sedate. It's, Gordon's alive? Like that. But then whenever Brian Blessed quotes it, it's like, Gordon's alive! At top of his voice. Like, it's interesting how the popular perception is of him yelling the line, so he yells the line. Because we all know of Brian Blessed as being loud, so therefore everyone interprets that line as being loud, even though it's not. Become a simulacrum, or whatever. Brian, don't let the bastards grind you down, Blessed. Absolutely. He's great. I mean, I'm sure he's got horrible opinions and done horrible things. But I sort of... I like Brian Blessed. He's from up north as well. He's from Northern England. Just a wild sort of person. Apparently he's very popular in Japan. He's a British celebrity. It's worse than a coin toss at this point. Yeah, it really is. It's because most of our... See, here's the thing. Most of our, media, politicians, media, senior academics, newspaper owners, business owners, actors, singers, celebrities in general, all come from the same class, right? Because of classism in the UK, they all pretty much come from the same class. And so, this kind of, turfy stuff, this turfism, if you like, is basically very tied to that class. It's not unique to it, but it's very tied to that class. So, of course, seeing as everybody's from the same class, that's what we see a lot of. Brian Blessed, he isn't from that class because he's from a working class like mine in family. When, up until kind of going sort of between the end of the Second World War and about the 1970s, there was a lot more social mobility in the UK, just for a few decades. And so that's why there's that whole, like raft of actors and stuff who are from that era, and they're different. They're from a different class. They've got different views. Like Patrick Stewart, Sir Ian McKellen, Sir Derek Jacobi, it's Kenneth Branagh even, Brian Blessed. But of course, once Thatcher got in 79, they did a lot of effort to reverse that social mobility. And, when Blair got in 97, he didn't do a lot to bring it back. Tinkered around the edges. Tom Cruise is the last Starfighter, exactly. Interestingly, the samurai fella, who I mentioned, the Kenjutsu master, he actually praised Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai. But I think that was more about... he was impressed, I think, that an American had actually learned, how to do Kinjutsu, rather than being a fan of Tom Cruise or the film. Okay, I was wrong. Will Wheaton is in the last Starfighter. At least the confusion is because they both came out early 80s and I watched them recently. That's fair enough. Yeah, that's fair enough. I remember while I was on holiday the other week, I read this brilliant quote from Sir Ian McKellen, where he talks about the importance of gay people, gay men, I think specifically, standing with trans people. Because he's like, the oppression that trans people face now is exactly what was faced by the common or garden gay a few decades ago. And he's right. He's completely right, and it's nice to see that solidarity. But yeah, as B-Right says, worse than a coin toss at this point. Absolutely. And of course, just because they're not from the same class grouping as all the celebrities, don't mean they're also based, right? I'm always so wary of using based, because I've seen so many right wingers use it. Like Caesar's Legion in New Vegas is based. No, they're not. It's one of the things that actually put me off New Vegas a little bit. The reason I didn't do it straight away, I didn't play it for as long as I did, is because I keep seeing people praising horrible things online. Cause I didn't know what Legion was, but I knew enough to know they were a bad faction. Clipped and shipped, don't you dare. Cancel no. Yeah, I mostly read based as the opposite of woke, which is how right wingers use it, but I know left wingers use it too. If you watch Red Planet, you'll hear based a lot. And so it took me, I still got have a discomfort using it. But I've been described as based myself, and not by right wingers. I think based just means agrees with my values. Bonbons, yeah. Great, bang the nail on the head there. So wherever you sit, agrees with my values, I think the original use is specifically to be the opposite of woke, but it's been reclaimed somewhat. But I'm uncomfortable with that. That's fair enough. Because because of how I've encountered it, it's not something I use myself. But if someone I know uses it, I'm not gonna kind of be like, wait a minute, are you a secret? When people accuse anybody who uses Pepe the Frog emotes as being a secret fascist or something. I'm certainly not doing that. But at the same time, it's not something I use myself particularly. I'm more acidic than based. See, those kind of jokes I always love. My autofocus is having a day today. Oh, is that what I think it is? Is that what I think it is? Is that what I think it is? They can't all be basic B words though. Is that okay? Is she live or is she starting screen live? Live, right? Goofing around with camera live. Well, that's close enough for me. Goofing around with camera live is close enough for me. So don't leave, we'll do a raid. This is probably one of the longest painting streams I've ever done, actually. Alright. So, that's kind of wrap up for today then. So thank you everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. We've had some fun conversations, we've had some laughs, we've talked about some important things. While I've done this, let's have a look-see. We've done a lot. It's not finished, even all the base coating of the red, but we've got a lot done there. I think that's a pretty good start. That's a good start to it. It'll get more interesting the more we go on, but it's still a fairly samey sort of thing. Great stream, thank you, Lewis. Thank you, heck yeah, Beer and Bomban, thank you. Thanks for stream. Have a good night. Thank you, Frezzo, you too. So yeah, let's get it set up for a raid. Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed that. I'll be back on Tuesday around 2000 BST for Minecraft with Loomis of Phelan, who is in the chat right now. And then I'll be back a week today at around 1800 BST for more painting. We're going to be carrying on with that. Join our Discord if you want. Thank you, Loomis. Thank you for stream. No problem, Alexis. So thank you, everybody, for keeping me company. Thank you, Bam Bam, B-Rat, Loomis, Frezzo, Alexis. I might have said not everybody's name, but thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for keeping me company and having a good chat. Hope you have a lovely weekend. Let's get the raid going. Let's get it all set up because, you know, these things work how they work, don't they? And I have to do this because it's ridiculous. A ridiculous setup I've got going on. Hold on, it's gone wrong. Then when the raid's ready to go, I'll slip us over onto the ending screen. Let's make sure this works. There we go. We're all getting ready. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for keeping me company. I hope you've enjoyed that. This has been a great stream. Thank you everybody for keeping me company. All right, we're now on the raid time. 5 out of 5. Thank you, Frezzo. I appreciate that. Maybe I should get everyone to give me a rating too. But yeah, okay. Let's get everything ready. All right, I'm going to go onto the ending screen and then we'll raid over. So yeah, thank you again for everybody for watching. Thank you for keeping me company and we've had a good laugh. So hope you've enjoyed that too. I hope to see you all soon. Until then, take care and namarie.